over 1,400 people were gassed. Over 400 of them were children. This is not something we've fabricated. This is not something that we are using as an excuse for military action. As I said last night, I was elected to end wars, not start them.
Oh, yeah. But doesn't he speak like a man with conviction? Like a leader you would follow into war? Someone you would believe? Someone who is passionate about this whole thing? There were 4,000 people. I mean, come on. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show, folks. You heard Malcolm Hoenlein of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations give his case why he thinks we should be going into Syria. Joining us now is my friend Joel Rosenberg, former advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu, author of Damascus Countdown. You know, I don't want to get to prophetic stuff here, but Joel, you're getting a little too prophetic for me here. And we welcome in Joel Rosenberg. Hey, Joel, how are you?
Doing great, Steve. Good to be with you.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, we had you on when the book came out. The book is just a wonderful book, and it's scary. And now here we are, you know, all these months later, and here we are dealing with us possibly bombing Damascus. But you don't think that we should go in?
Well, look, let's start with the fictional premise of the book and then compare it to what's going on right now. The Damascus Countdown, which is about to come out in paperback, it focuses on an American president who is trying to pressure an Israeli prime minister not to launch a preemptive military strike to take out Iran's nuclear facilities. But the Israeli prime minister concludes that he's dealing with an American president who is weak, dithering, vacillating, and not able to protect either American interests or Israeli interests, given the situation going on in the Middle East. So Israel hits anyway, in defiance of the United States, because it feels like it's facing a nuclear holocaust. And then Iran teams up with Syria to retaliate using weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
That's the fictional premise of Damascus Countdown.
So let's fast forward to reality now. Yeah.
Well, clearly we're not there yet. But given where we are with President Obama being perceived widely in Washington, broadly across the United States, and even more broadly across the world, he is perceived right now as weak, dithering, vacillating, unclear how to proceed, whether to proceed, what to do. There are a number of implications of that, but one of which is that the actual Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is looking at this, and he and his team have to be thinking, if President Obama is having this much trouble with how to handle limited strikes in Syria, there is very little chance that this president is going to know how to handle the much larger existential strategic threat, which is the Iran nuclear program, which could lead, in reality, Prime Minister Netanyahu to decide that he's alone and that Israel's going to have to take preemptive action soon. So that's the context that we're in. Now, if you ask me about my own personal views, look, you know, I'm an evangelical Christian. I'm from a Jewish background. You know, my name is Rosenberg. When I hear about people being gassed to death, I want to hit this guy, Assad, and I want to punish him. But my problem is this. I don't have confidence that President Obama and his team have the wisdom and the trustworthiness and the steady hand to handle this thing right. And I'm afraid by lurching into a military action in Syria, you could set into motion things that could be much, much worse than what the current situation is, even though this current situation is horrific.
Absolutely.
The scenario where Al-Qaeda comes to power and has the weapons of mass destruction, the chemical weapons, in their hands.
Well, let me stop you there, and let's talk about these wonderful rebels. Reports today in the village of Maloula, it's been taken over by Syrian rebels associated with Al-Qaeda. They stormed the residences and town centers, and as they shouted Allah Akbar, which John McCain says is the same as a Christian saying thank God, by the way, and they threatened Christians with conversion to Islam or beheading. I mean, no one. That's just kind of like an inconvenient truth.
Yeah. Look, you've got evil versus evil here. That's the challenge. I'm not saying there aren't any rebels that are half decent and want a free.
Yeah, but who the heck are they and where are they?
But they're a small percentage, and they're a shrinking percentage. You have the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee the other day. He said that 50% plus of the rebels are Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda allies, and that number is increasing day by day. Why? Because Al-Qaeda types are being drawn into this battle, which they see as an opportunity to take on the United States and give us a bloody nose or worse. So, look, it's a terrible situation, and by getting involved militarily when you don't have a plan and you don't have the confidence of your country, the Congress, or the world, and you're pretty much all by yourself, President Obama has the risk of making the situation much worse, of toppling Assad, which in a different environment would be good, but in this environment, it really could be that Al-Qaeda takes over. And then what do you do when Al-Qaeda suddenly is in control of the storehouses of chemical and biological weapons? I mean, that is a nightmare scenario. And then we've squandered all of this American political clout in the Middle East, and we still haven't dealt with Iran, which is a much larger, much more important issue.
Absolutely.
And that's why I wrote Damascus Countdown.
We're talking to Joel Rosenberg, former advisor to Bibi Netanyahu, author of Damascus Countdown. When's it out in paperback?
Comes out, it's starting to show up in stores now. It'll be there in about a week. Great
timing. Well, let me ask you about this, and of course, as an evangelical Christian, and you wrote about this, and you posted 23 pages of study notes, and you've been asked about this by a member of the U.S. Congress, a member of the Canadian Parliament, about Syria and about biblical prophecies. And so explain to me Isaiah 17 and Jeremiah 49, and the question you've been asked, how does that relate? Does that foretell the destruction of Damascus? And keep it as simple as possible.
As simple as possible, absolutely. And that is woven into the novel, by the way, is imagining how that might play out. But the short version is, yes, Isaiah 17 and Jeremiah 49 are biblical prophecies that deal with the destruction one day of the entire city of Damascus, that it would be utterly destroyed, that no one would live there, that it would be burned with fire, and all of its men of war, quote unquote, will be silenced. Look, that's a sobering thought, and it's an end times prophecy, meaning it's something that hasn't happened yet. It's eschatological. It will happen in the end of days. But people are starting to ask themselves, is it possible that those prophecies are going to happen soon, somehow related to the current crisis? The short version, Steve, is I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think anyone could possibly know, because the Bible doesn't say exactly when it's going to happen. We know it hasn't happened yet. Damascus is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in history, right? It was first mentioned in the Bible in the book of Genesis. So that really dials way back, Genesis chapter 14. And it's a very important city, even up to this very second that you and I are talking.
Let me ask you a question. Does the Muslim, the Ayatollahs in Iran, for instance, who believe that Armageddon will bring the missing imam or the prophet, whatever, I think imam, and then they'll all go to heaven. So they want the world destroyed. They want chaos. Does this play into their scripture at all, any way, shape, or form? I mean, I know they go by the Quran, not by the Bible or the New Testament, but does it intertwine at all in your view?
It's interesting that you asked that, Steve, because it might. You're right. In the Quran, it doesn't talk about these specific end times prophecies, but Shia Muslims do believe that there's an end time scenario in which their Messiah, called the 12th Imam or the Mahdi, comes back. And the conquering of Damascus does play a role, an element in their prophetic scenario. So that's why you have so much interest right now, obviously geopolitically, obviously this humanitarian relief crisis. You've got 7 million Syrians are fleeing for their lives. 1 out of every 3 people in the country have fled their homes and villages, 2 million of which have crossed the borders. So this is a terrible thing. Then you've got Shia eschatology, and you have Jewish and Christian eschatology in the Old Testament talking about a catastrophe happening in Damascus. And you're right. At my website, joelrosenberg.com, I've posted these 23 pages of notes so people can study it for themselves, print them out, and assess it for themselves.
Yeah. I'll tell you, very, very interesting conversation. Joel, as always, a pleasure to speak with you, sir. Thank you, and good luck with the paperback version of Damascus Countdown.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be with you.
My pleasure. Joel Rosenberg, ladies and gentlemen. All right. I want to open the phones up because that's the kind of guy I am. I want to open the phones. I crack myself up sometime because no one else laughs. Someone's got to laugh at what I say. 855-77.